Welcome back to another video, and today I'll be discussing the newest makeup announcements and releases. Welcome back, and today we're going to be discussing some of the new makeup announcements and releases that have been made during the last week or so. This episode I think is going to be a bit shorter, and this is now the first episode that we are going to be covering this year in my channel holiday releases. So what I'm going to do, because if you don't want to hear about Christmas launches yet, or you don't, for example, want to get spoiled, I will put one single timestamp and I will put the names of the brands that we're discussing during the holiday segment. So if you just want to skip altogether all the releases, then you can skip the whole timestamp basically. And there's going to be one advent calendar already here that the contents are going to be shown in. So especially with that one, I am going to warn you beforehand that if you are planning to buy that particular advent calendar and don't want any spoilers, then I'm going to say separately that hey, now we're covering the advent calendar, so you can this is the point where you either close your eyes and ears or then just skip completely. Otherwise, aside from now the sort of collection of holiday launches, I do say that this week altogether was a bit quieter. I am filming this one day earlier than usually because I usually film on Sundays. However, because I do have some actually things planned for tomorrow, that's why we're filming this on Saturday. So there might be some releases that are not gonna just make to this one purely because I am filming this a day earlier, but we're gonna be then talking about those next week. Second, I think, and things of notice, the heat wave is finally, at least for now, over, so it is much more, how should I say, nicer conditions to film compared to the last couple of weeks, so I am at least pretty thrilled about that one, that it is a bit now cooler here. It is still like over 20 degrees, but at least now the wind where I live is now the wind at least now is very cool, and it sort of helps to cool down the whole temperature, because the last couple of weeks since it's been so hot, even though it's been windy, it's kind of just the wind pushing the hot air around and it hasn't been feeling that refreshing. So I'm also pretty happy that we are finally having a bit more humane conditions to film compared to the last couple of videos. But anyway, let's start talking about the new launches, and as I said, we will be starting out with the holiday launches. So let's start going through, as I said, first all the holiday. So this was the first one that I think, this got leaked, and I think this might already be available somewhere. These are not available in our Hourglass retailers, but this definitely, because I have seen also like people literally having these face palettes, so that is why I have come to the conclusion that at least in some region these have been available to buy. So because we're talking about Hourglass, if you know the thrill by now with the makeup industry, every year Hourglass comes out with these 6-pan face palettes. We have 3 variations, and I do think, at least because Hourglass used to be notorious, they only did 1 or 2 variations, and usually they didn't cover a whole lot of shade ranges with those variations, but at least these 3 seem that there is one that is clearly for fair skin tones, one that is for medium, and one that is for deeper. I do think that if you have collected, and I know a lot of makeup enthusiasts have collected these, I don't think there is anything new in terms of these shades, even though there might be like technically new shades, but if you just have generally a lot of these Hourglass face palette, there's most likely dupes from their older shade that can dupe any of these shades within these newer ones. I think the most interesting thing about this one is the cover art that these have. I actually do kind of like the cover art they did go for this year. I did see some commenting that people were like saying that they looked like AI designed, but for me these actually looked nicer. I actually genuinely like these ones. I think if I would have to choose one of these palettes just based on the cover, I would take the one with the white horse, because I don't think, you probably don't know this, but I used to go horseback riding when I was a kid. I did stop horseback riding when I was preteen, because I started because when I was getting to be like a preteen teenager, I would have supposed to be moved on to riding like bigger, like proper horses. I started out with ponies and then with some like smaller horse breeds. But when it was time for me to move on to riding like the big guys, I started being a bit afraid. It was a bit strange because I never had the experience, and a lot of people who have either done horseback riding or they have had kids horseback riding, you know that it can happen that you can fall off from the horse, and that can be very traumatic if it happens. But I never fell off from the horse, so I didn't have a negative experience, but for some reason I started getting a bit afraid of them, so that is why I stopped. But because I'm still a horse girly through and through, the one with the horse in the cover would be the one that I would get. These are probably gonna be, the price of these has gone up every year that these have launched, so I think that you will have to pay over 100 euros again to get one of these, but I have always said that if you don't own any Hourglass, I do think this is the best deal you're gonna get. So if you don't have any Hourglass cheek products, then I would actually say that one of these palettes could be a good deal. Next part from Lancome, and I'm a bit confused because I think there might be two variations, or it could be that some of these are regional exclusive. So first palette I'm gonna show you, and I'm very sorry because I don't think I have like name for these ones yet. So first one seems to be a palette, and I do think they did something similar last year where there seems to be 4 eye shades and then there's a 1 cheek shade. And the first palette variation looks to be something that there's a pink blush, and then you have some pop of blue, and then you have this sort of pink leaning neutrals on it. The eyeshadows looks to be, I think these are more satin-like shades. The matte brown shade in the first one could be a matte, but I do think also like last year the shades were satin or shimmer shades. I don't think last year also the Lancome holiday palettes had any mattes in them. So first one was sort of this quad with the cheek shade, and then there is the second one that has a bit more deeper looking. Actually, maybe this could actually be that one variation, because now that I'm looking at the other one that you're gonna be in the picture here, this looks to be a bit deeper in terms of the blush, and especially if you look at the eyeshadow, the brown is much deeper. So actually this could be the variation meant for deeper skin tones, which is kind of good because I do remember usually Lancome has had only like one palette that is meant to cover everyone. But this looks to be that the blush is definitely more deeper, and also the sort of eyeshadow shades generally are deeper. Again, I'm gonna say with this one I do have to say the brown definitely looks like it's a matte. The other shades, eyeshadow shades, look to be shimmers. Lancome's holiday releases, I do think the last year was quite something that I said in terms of design was actually quite alright, but these aren't the sort of palettes that I'm attracted to, so for me this is a skip. YSL, I do think we will come back to the YSL because I do believe that this isn't necessarily the only thing. I think also with some of these other brands, with the Lancome ones, when we get the full collections, I'm still gonna feature them again. But with YSL, we have seen now the quad. I actually did end up getting the holiday quad from last year. I do think the quality of it was decent. It was more of a purchase that I think I did make. The package kind of sold it to me, but it was a pretty good, it was like my first experience with the new YSL eyeshadow formula. I do think it was nice. So the last year's eyeshadow quad was this like a brown quad that was quite gold leaning. This year's variation seems to be a lot more brown neutral leaning when you look at the shades. I do think this is a bit similar to what they have, because I do still think that while last year's quad was definitely a typical neutral palette with some golds in it, it was at least somehow, I think, different from the neutral palettes that they already had in their permanent line of these quads. But this one I think looks quite similar to what they might already have. I'm not gonna say completely no to this. Again, I do think they're executing the packaging quite well. Last year they had this sort of white packaging with a golden fishnet. This year it's a completely like all gold all around. I do again like the packaging of this one. I do think they're YSL doing a pretty good job with this one. As I said, we're probably gonna get back to this one once we see also other things, because most likely they're gonna have lipsticks and some of their perfumes also included. Okay, now we're getting to the first advent calendar, so if you don't want to see spoilers for Makeup Revolution's this year's advent calendar, this is the point you're gonna be skipping, or close your eyes or something. So, this is the first like advent calendar that I definitely have seen the whole content. There's been like few now advent calendars that now brands are beginning to launch. You can already order P. Louise's advent calendar, though usually the spoilers for that come pretty late, so with that one it's definitely I think gonna take time before we're gonna see any contents. Harrods I think just announced and sneak peek a couple of things. I think Harrods is gonna be having altogether 3 advent calendars this year. Cult Beauty has already also teased their advent calendar. We have seen some contents of it, but this is definitely now the first one where we have the full content. So with Makeup Revolutions this year, there's gonna be, it's 24-day advent calendar with 10 full-size products, though I will have to say, based on the picture, all the other products are good deluxe midi sizes. So with this one, actually I'm gonna be like straightforward. This is probably the drugstore advent calendar, at least so far, I would get if you're balling on a budget with advent calendars, because I do think when I'm looking at these products, there's actually a pretty good Like, because in some years Revolution had a bit of the issues that some of the content was pretty repetitive and it didn't feel that the calendars offered necessarily anything unique, but I think with this one, like I can already see like sneak peeks. I think they might be including one of their bouncy blushes in this one. I think there's an like single eyeshadow, which is something that I don't think we have seen from them. There seems to be some sort of glow sticks and blush sticks. I think those might be also a product category that they... Do they have this? I think it's this advent calendar kind of maybe spoiling some of their fall releases, because usually these products are kind of products that they have full size in their range. So I'm thinking that are we also getting some spoilers for their like future launches? There seems to be like also eyeshadow stick included in this one, which is again another product that I haven't seen at least in their main range. We are getting a midi size of their bullet lipsticks and also their translucent powder. The powder is something I think that they have included every year. And there's going to be some lipsticks and highlighter palette and some of their lip glosses. There's also going to be a mascara, which is going to be called... it's a bit small, but I think that's a fiber mascara that is supposed to be volumizing. And there's going to be also their lip glosses and lip oils. So I'm going to say altogether, I do think that this is probably the drugstore advent calendar that you should be watching out. They did actually announce... I think a few days ago that you can now sign up for the waitlist on their website. They haven't revealed this completely on their website, but as I said, this was... I think this originally leaked on Amazon or something, that people got the like whole picture of the contents. Also, there is a 4-pan Icon eyeshadow palette. I'm pretty happy that they actually upgraded the eyeshadow palette. Last year they put a 6-pan and it was their sort of like, what was, because they have this line of very cheap eyeshadow palettes that are in sort of like see-through plastic packaging, and I actually was the one, I actually did comment because they were gathering feedback, and I did say that please put the new Icon formula eyeshadow palettes in the advent calendar, because that is definitely like the best eyeshadow formula that they have. We didn't get a full set of those ones, but I am quite happy to get the 4-pan in this year, so yeah. But altogether, I would say that if you're looking for a drugstore advent calendar, keep your eyes open, because this might actually be one of the better ones for this year. Then are we... Yeah, we are still having a couple of more. So next one is Chanel's holiday collection, and how should I say this? We are getting something interesting. We're going to be having a all blue quad, which is not something we usually see these adventures from, especially like brands like Chanel. I'm not gonna need any of the quad or the lip products in this one though, but I am kinda eyeing, surprise surprise, the blushes, because I think there's gonna be 2 shimmery blushes, Rose Lumiere and Peach Lumiere, and I think the Rose Lumiere is the one that I'm kinda eyeing. That's probably gonna be very expensive again, considering that I bought the fall blush from Chanel a couple of years ago and that definitely wasn't cheap. Yeah. I am kind of liking that Chanel is doing something different. I do kind of like this sort of like, I think the theme of this might be the sort of silent night theme. If you kind of know the song, then you kind of get the vibe that I'm going for with this one. So I am kind of thinking it's pretty good that Chanel is doing maybe something that I would say quite brave, because usually luxury brands, they can be quite safe with these releases. Then Dior's holiday collection, and there's gonna be a lot. So with Dior, we always get this sort of like special edition like multi-use palette that has like all the sort of lip shades and everything together. That's usually something that I'm not that excited about, because I don't think it's the like necessarily the best quality from Dior. Then there's gonna be a sort of there's gonna be like altogether 3 eyeshadow palettes, but I'm gonna be now focusing maybe the like the 2 ones that are interesting. So the ones that are in the quints, and this is gonna be, there's gonna be a brown reddish leaning one, which is gonna be called 630 Fiery Circus, and then the interesting one, which is 912 Plump Parade. I think the Plump Parade might be the one that's gonna get sold out. So because this is, I don't think we have seen, because Dior, they have done blue palettes like quints definitely in the past, but plum is definitely not a shade that we see from Dior. It is something that we might have seen from other brands, but from Dior that is not something we often see. I'm gonna say that I'm still more interested to the neutral one, but I kinda did get the reddish pinkish leaning one from their holiday collection last year, so the plum one could be something interesting. Something else, they're also coming with new shades. I might have critiqued their last year holiday collection that they came out with highlighters, but we didn't get blushes. Well, this year apparently I have been heard they are coming out with 3 new blush shades, and this isn't the similar packaging that their sort of backstage blushes are from, and there's gonna be a more of a There's gonna be Starry Pink, Starry Pink, Fiery Red, and Story Mauve. The mauvish one is kind of looking tempting for me. What else? We are getting a Disco Star highlighter. That is looking quite of an interesting yellow linen highlighter, though that is a skip because it's a yellow linen highlighter. And then we're gonna get lip products. Apparently a new thing is gonna be that you can kind of see that the row of these double-sided lip products in the image. So I think that's the kind of new product that is coming out with this collection. And then we get their bullet lipsticks. I have to actually say, in terms of Dior, this is pretty good work. I'm definitely not buying everything. My budget is just not enough, and I'm kind of thinking that is it so that because this image includes the Backstage line blushes, so this is kind of making me thinking that is it so that we're not gonna get a Backstage eyeshadow palette, because then I would think that it would have been included in this one. It could still be that we get a eyeshadow palette from the Backstage line, but I would say the most interesting thing in this one, the Backstage line blushes, and then the quints, those are definitely looking the one that I'm eyeing from this one, but we're gonna have to see in terms of pricing. Usually, especially these special edition holiday quints have been more expensive than their mainline quints, and you need to have certain taste for eyeshadow to enjoy this one. I definitely say that Dior quints, considering how much they cost, they are definitely not anyone. I would not recommend them to most people if you're asking the best bang for your buck in terms of eyeshadow palettes. Okay, I think that was so holiday now over, and now we can get to the more normal releases. So first one, I think this was a more of a industry news, but I do think because this is a very popular product and this is really highly rated product amongst the makeup users, I did want to bring this out. So Urban Decay, and they already have relaunched this product. So Urban Decay has redone their all-nighter setting spray. This is a setting spray that has a cult following because it really makes your makeup last long, and it's famous for the fact that it has this kind of cooling effect on you. Well, the reason why Urban Decay reformulated this one is because apparently Scandinavia, who has actually been manufacturing the formula for that particular setting spray, apparently Urban Decay's parent company, which is L'Oreal, this is not uncommon in makeup market, L'Oreal owns a lot of other makeup brands, apparently L'Oreal decided that they don't want to continue with the contract they had with Scandinavia, who is providing the formulation, which is probably kind of them saying that, L'Oreal saying that they don't want to pay, because obviously it's an extra cost to pay someone else for the patent of the formula, so probably this is a way to save cost. Why I do think this was done in a very, how should I say, I didn't like how Urban Decay did this one, and how L'Oreal did this, because just before, I think day before or a couple of days before this was announced, they made this very strange promotional video in their Urban Decay social media where they were saying that putting these supposedly or they probably were genuine, but they put these reviews where everyone was saying basically how bad the Urban Decay all-nighter setting spray was, which is bizarre considering that for most people it's a cult favorite. And then they went on announcing that they had reformulated, but I don't think Urban Decay was very transparent about it, that the reason they reformulated was the fact that they aren't no longer using the patented formula that the Scandinavia has. However, I am quite happy that Scandinavia did actually stand their ground, and then they made their own post. I'm gonna post the first picture of it. I would very much advise going to Instagram and reading Scandinavia's post about this, because I do think this is a case where I think the bigger company, which was the L'Oreal, was trying to sweep under the smaller company Scandinavia that they had been paying for the patents. And I'm glad that Scandinavia came out and said that, hey, the reason that they are reformulating is actually because they're no longer paying us for the formula that we used to provide for them. And also Scandinavia, they did kind of make a comment that they weren't also happy how L'Oreal came out with this one. And I'm kind of thinking that also L'Oreal could have gone with this one, they could have communicated this, that hey, we're just parting ways and we want to thank Scandinavia for the cooperation and success we had, and we wish well for them. And I think that would have been okay. Then people would have been thinking that okay, it's gonna be no different formula, but at least they were cordial with it. But the way that the advertising was done, where basically the social media post in Urban Decay's channel was that, oh, the all-nighter or the previous formula, it was so bad, it was so horrible because we were using the Scandinavia formula. And then you're thinking, but dude, you've been using this formula for years, and that's why it's actually a fan favorite. So yeah. So I think that was a bit crappy of them, but as I said, you can go to Scandinavia's post to read more about it. And you can still buy, because Scandinavia, I think they are more of a makeup, I think they're more of a makeup pro like directed brand, but you can still buy their setting spray, I think at least on their own website, and I do think they might have some retailers, but I can understand that they're definitely probably harder to get than Urban Decay, who has like, because they are owned by this big conglomerate, they probably have like more reach. So I do think it's gonna like somehow hurt, of course, Scandinavia's business, because they are no longer gonna be available in as large of a distribution when they were available to Urban Decay. But that is just some industry news, but I thought it would be good to know, because I do know that the all-nighter has a pretty big cult following. Dieverune Cosmetics is launching a new palette, so this is the Magnetic Mineralia. Yeah, sorry, the font is making this look. So this is Magnetic Mineralia, and I think this is a collaboration with Andromeda. I'm not familiar with this collaborator, but I do actually have to say that color story of this one was kind of interesting. It is this sort of neutral palette with a pop of like yellow and purples, and I do actually think this is kind of appealing to me. I am kind of considering, because I do think Monolith Shop announced that this is going to be on their August launch, and I'm now kind of waiting for them to put this up on their website to see how much this is gonna cost. But I'm kind of mildly interested in this one. The sort of yellow-purple eyeshadow combo, it's not like my go-to, but it's something that I do think occasionally is quite fun to dabble in. But I do think, if you can kind of see the image, it is mostly like a neutral leaning palette that then kind of has the purples and yellows as an accent to it. I think this is like something different. I don't think we have seen a lot with this kind of color story from indie brands or brands in general recently, so I think this is quite a cool launch. Then Kiko has launched, I think this is supposed to be their August collection, and this is the Lumiverse collection. So this was a bit comical because they are advertising this as this like intergalactic collection that has these all fun things in it. I do think it's like they have one single multi-chrome eyeshadow that is actually the same color that is the liquid eyeshadow that's included in the collection. So both of these eye products are basically the sort of red multi-chrome that kind of turns into brown, but just based on already like I have seen this like products used in life, because used like by influencers, because this is Kiko Milano, the multi-chrome shift, it's not gonna be like that obvious concept if compared to some if you go and buy some like very higher end expensive indie brand. So I think this is kind of like maybe fun way they're trying to bring like a little bit of multi-chrome action to the like European drugstore, but I do think that maybe the advertising of this collection made it look much more exciting than what it actually is. I do actually have to say I like the highlighters in this collection. There's also some metallic lipsticks and what else? Also the individual eyeshadows. So Kiko's these sort of water, I think they're somehow like water activated eyeshadows that you can use these definitely like without the water, but if you use these individual shimmer eyeshadows with water, then you get much more oomph with them. So I think those are the kind of interesting things about this one, but it's there's also like a lot of products where I went kind of like, I was thinking that okay, yeah, you're just trying to like market this as maybe more interesting than it actually is. There's also some lip liners, there's some blush sticks, and I think there's some body highlighters in this one, but yeah. How should I say this? There are like some interesting things in this one, but with this sort of like intergalactic theme, they could have maybe gone a bit more bolder in terms of the products that they did include in this collection. Who was this by? Yeah, so Simply Posh Cosmetics has launched their summer palette, so this is called the Down to Earth palette. I do think this looks quite similar to their palette that they had last year, and they did actually comment this on their Instagram where they posted a comparison photo of this one and their last summer's palette, and they did say that they could make like good companion palettes. For me, this is a color story that doesn't appeal to me because it has this sort of tones of colorful shades that I'm not not perhaps like what I would mainly like go for. But I do think it's a fun summer launch, and I definitely think if you like these more earthy, colorful tones, then this actually could be a quite good eyeshadow palette to get, but for me this is a skip. Beauty Creations, so this is a brand we don't talk about because I just don't think generally this brand Their products are kind of like that it looks like that they almost are there, but they would need just a bit more maybe refining. However, this is a very inexpensive brand, and I do think, for example, on Europe you can get these through Bougie Shop at least. So, but I did want to talk about this because I do think this IP collab might interest some. So Beauty Creations is coming out with the collaboration with Powerpuff Girls, and this is sort of Powerpuff Girl cowboy themed collab. So I think they have some stick blushes in this one, then you have some lip oils, then there's like an eyeshadow palette, and then you have some, I think, skincare. There's like eye patches in this one. Am I the only one who's driven crazy by the fact that the palette has so many wasted space? I think they could have done this in a much more like smaller... The palette could have been definitely like smaller in terms of size because there's a lot of wasted space. I don't actually... Like, I think they're like dividing this basically because you have the shades divided by the Powerpuff Girl. I don't remember the girls' names in English now, sorry, so I'm not gonna be like going over them. Bubbles, Buttercup, and okay, I'm gonna be checking the names now so I don't completely make a fool of myself. Just a sec. Okay, so we are back with the check them. So yeah, so the shades in the palette are divided by the sort of three girls, so Blossom, Bubbles, and Buttercup. So I don't actually mind the sort of dividing the palette that way, but there's just so much wasted space in this one. I'm not so sure is this yet available. I haven't seen this yet on Bougie Shop and I'm a bit unsure will this come, but I do think this might be something that you can get at least on their own website, and because it's beauty creation, as I said, it's very inexpensive. And I think we're actually on the last one. So Laura Mercier is actually coming out with a new setting spray, so this is, they're advertising this as the Cloud-like Mist. So I think this might have an aerosol in it, meaning that it is much more finer than the one that are in the sort of spritzers. So apparently this is supposed to be microfine, continuous mist, no propellants or gases. Okay, so that's probably something that meant they're trying to like imply that it's not that it's somehow better because it doesn't have those. Non-aerosol and so they're saying that it's non-aerosol and it's alcohol free. So that's interesting that they're able to do this fine mister without it being an aerosol bottle. So that is something. Sets to keep makeup fresh for 24 hours, hydrates skin and controls shine, keeps makeup crease and fade proof. It's interesting that this is again supposed to be, and we have now seen this with I think a couple of setting spray launches, that they're advertising that it's supposed to be hydrating while it's supposed to hold your makeup together for 20 hours. Usually these have been like something that someone is gonna exclude another, because usually a hydrating setting spray would mean that it would kinda bring back the glow to your makeup and sort of melding your makeup better together, but it didn't necessarily mean that's gonna help with the longevity. However, then if you had a setting spray that advertised, for example, the original Urban Decay All Nighter that would stick your makeup together, however, if you, for example, had a dry skin or something like that, then it probably meant, because usually those have more alcohol in it, then it usually meant that the setting spray could be drying if you had the kind of skin type that didn't agree with those kind of setting sprays. So we are seeing more and more these like hybrid setting sprays that are kind of promising to do it all. This is probably going to be very expensive, so as a setting spray I think this might be something that I would skip, but if you are a Laura Mercier fan and have been looking for a setting spray from them, I do think they do have setting spray in their line, but if you've been looking for a new setting spray with them, I think this is supposed to be available soon. As I said, it was a quieter week. In terms of like what was interesting, I did say new Dieverune eyeshadow palette. I'm not gonna like yet make conclusions that what Christmas things I'm gonna buy, because we are still in so beginning, even though it's absurd because we did have like a decent chunk of this video was basically holiday releases, but I know that there's just so many releases that we haven't yet seen. In terms of advent calendars, I think last year I did a separate sort of makeup news advent calendar special edition video where I compiled all the makeup advent calendars in one video. I think I'm gonna do that again this year because that video was quite popular, so I think there is definitely a demand definitely later in the fall. I think maybe somewhere around October or November, when I think at that point we have then seen most of the advent calendars released. Then I'm gonna do the compilation video for those ones. Comment down below what did you think about the launch that I talk about, or is there some other launch that I may have missed that you are excited for. If you like this video, push the like button and subscribe to the channel, ring the bell button if you want to get notifications from future content. You can also find me with the same nickname Makeup Hedgehog on Instagram. I hope you see you soon in another video. Bye bye!